Access to Democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Crutchfield Dermatology, a full-service treatment center and Medi-Spa in Eagan. Their goal is to help you look good and feel great with beautiful skin. With service built around courtesy, dignity, and respect, Mayo-trained Dr. Charles Crutchfield personally treats each patient and is acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org. Edina Eye Physicians and Surgeons, a division of Twin Cities Eye Consultants, has proudly served the Twin Cities for more than 55 years now in 7 convenient locations. Using the most advanced technology combined with human touch, Edina Eye offers comprehensive services and dedicated specialists committed to excellence, with innovative procedures and expertise for the most advanced eye care.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Access to Democracy. I'm your guest host today, Steve Francisco. It's a real pleasure today to invite a first-time visitor to our studio today and an old friend of mine. Jason Viana is the Executive Director of the Open Door Food Pantry in Eagan. And I should say right at the outset, Jason and I have known each other since, about 2010, Jason? I was an adjunct professor at Hamline University teaching a Law for Nonprofits course, and I had the pleasure of having Jason as one of my students, and he's obviously exceeded and done very well in spite of that experience. Jason, welcome to Access to Democracy.
Thanks so much for having me, Steve. It's probably more because of the experience than in spite
Well,
of.
you're very kind. So tell us a little bit about yourself. You are not from around these parts, as we might say. Tell us about where you're from, where you went to school, and what you've done recently.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm from Alabama in Texas, and I've lived here since 2008. I live in Burnsville with an awesome wife and two little boys, where I coach basketball, and gosh, and I get to run an awesome organization and get to have conversations like this. So.
The Open Door Food Pantry, what is the Open Door and where does it exist? What do you do? What's your mission?
Yeah. Our mission is to fight hunger through access to healthy food. And we're a food shelf. I think that's probably the easiest way to talk about us. And there's over 500 in the state of Minnesota. So we're not unique in what we do. Most areas have their own. The Open Door is a bit unique. One, we're one of the largest food shelves in the state now. We feed somewhere between 10 and 14,000 people every month, but that's just right here in Dakota County. And so if you think about us in hunger relief sense, the big differentiator for us, we were built on 2 real simple concepts, which shouldn't be revolutionary, but at the time were. One is dignity. It's not easy to ask for help. You probably don't like to ask for help. So we try to make it easy for folks. And healthy food. And that's, we were one of the first food shelves in the state to offer perishable food when folks came. I think people traditionally think about a food shelf, they think about canned goods. And,
right.
I mean, do you only buy canned goods when you go to the store, Steve?
No.
Right.
Got to buy some perishable food too and some fruit and vegetables.
Right. And so at the Open Door, over 70% of the food we provide is fresh and healthy. Mm-hmm. So we let clients make their own choices. And another thing that's really differentiated the Open Door, because we're in the suburbs, so depending, I'm not sure where all the viewers will be watching this from, if you're in a suburb, transportation is a big challenge. And so you can't build a building everywhere that there's need. And so we have had for 10 years a mobile food program. We're the only in Dakota County. We have over 50 places around Dakota County where we take fresh and healthy food. And that could be a senior living facility, could be an elementary school, could be a low-income neighborhood, but we find the pockets of need and we find ways to get food to folks.
And I want you to tell our viewers how the Open Door began.
Yeah.
I understand you began in a closet, literally a closet of a church. Tell us about that.
Well, we started like a lot of great nonprofit organizations with a group of well-intended people that saw a problem and tried to do something about it. And so we started off with a group of volunteers at Mount Calvary Lutheran Church in Eagan. And there was no food access anywhere in Eagan, and for those that live in Eagan, it's a pretty affluent place, so no one needs food. And I often describe it as a bad Field of Dreams situation. You know, they built it and people came, and then they kept coming. And so for about 5 years, it was all volunteer run. It was Mount Calvary Lutheran Church. They asked for help from Easter Lutheran Church, who asked for help from St. John Newman Catholic Parish. And the three of them together managed what was becoming quickly something that was too big for a church to manage.
And those are three of the largest churches in the city of Eagan, too,
Right.
I believe. Yeah.
And so they decided, you know, this needs to be its own thing. And so they turned it into a 501c3. They got a board of directors, and that's how the Open Door started. And since then, yeah, we've grown to serve, you know, well, during the pandemic, upwards of 20,000 people every month.
I was going to ask you about that, Jason. Tell our viewers a little bit about what the impact of the COVID pandemic has been on demand. You know, COVID seems to have affected all of our lives in very profound ways. And I would imagine with the dislocations we've seen in the economy, people who have lost jobs, hopefully getting jobs back now. But tell us about what has happened with the demand for food at the Open Door during this pandemic because of the pandemic.
Well, it's been truly transformative. You know, before the pandemic, we were serving 7,000 people a month, and we were full. So if you think about, you know, if we had like an odometer at the Open Door, we didn't have any room. If you think about the emergency food system, whether that's Second Harvest, whether it's a food shelf, any other part of the state, you can ask, and they were all full. And so then you have this massive economic impact due to the pandemic. And I mean, its simplest sense, we just had to make room. Because there wasn't, you know, you think about absorbing excess demand, there wasn't space in the emergency food system for the demand. And so what organizations like ours have had to do, we had to make room in the inn, so to speak. And so we went, within 90 days, we went from 7,000 people a month to almost 20,000 people a month. Just, you know, part of that is our volunteers were willing to be creative and innovative, and we made room. And for perspective, Steve, since March of 2020, more than 50,000 people in Dakota County, not statewide, just in Dakota County, have come to the Open Door for the first time. So, I mean, talk about the impact of, holy cow, people that had never thought of themselves as having to come to a food shelf have had to come to a food shelf.
And you know, I think you referenced it just a moment ago. I think most of us tend to think of Eagan and surrounding area of Dakota County as a pretty affluent place, that you don't see a lot of obvious poverty in our community. And we tend to think of people who go to the food shelf as being unemployed or homeless people, but that's not quite an accurate picture, is it?
No, and it's understandable. I think everyone has an idea. It's just like food, right? You think about a food shelf, you think about canned food. Well, actually, that's not all the food. When you think about who comes to a food shelf, I think, you know, folks that are on the corner with the signs, that's what comes to mind. People pushing carts and homeless. And that's certainly folks that need food support. What I hope comes out of this is a redefinition or reimagining. When you think of someone that needs help with food, it's not just folks who you would think of as destitute. So many of the folks that come to the Open Door, they have jobs.
Right.
They can't make ends meet. It's not that there's not access to food. I mean, sometimes it's when you get, our clients tell us, when they come to the Open Door, they get a week to 10 days worth of groceries. That just helps them pay a different bill. And so that idea of who needs help, I guarantee you, if you're watching this show, someone you know has needed help during this pandemic.
Right. Very interesting. And also, you mentioned they have jobs. They sometimes have 2 or 3 jobs.
Right.
But those jobs individually, they don't earn enough money from those. They may be minimum wage jobs working at Wendy's or McDonald's or at Walmart or someplace, but the jobs don't pay sufficient income that they are food secure, that they don't need to rely on the food shelf.
Right, and so we'll go back to your question about Eagan or Dakota County. I mean, I think Dakota County is the first or second most affluent county in the state. And people, you know, I've often described poverty in the suburbs as like my 4-year-old son. Well, he's not 4 anymore, but when he was 4, one of his favorite things to do was put on a camouflage t-shirt. And we'd all pretend we couldn't see him. He was obviously right there. That's a bit like poverty is in the suburbs. It's right there. We just sometimes choose not to see it. So if you think just from a raw numbers standpoint, Steve, there's over 400,000 people in Dakota County. 48,000 people that live in Dakota County don't make a high enough wage to afford a cost of living.
One of your recent annual reports, I want to read this if I may, states that the federal poverty line is $25,750 a year, but it costs on average $65,000 a year. You need an income of $65,000 a year to live in Dakota County. 48,000 of our family, friends, and neighbors are living on incomes between these two numbers. So it sort of changes our perception about the need out there when people need assistance from a food shelf such as the Open Door Pantry.
Well, words have power. And the word poverty means different things to different people. But I mean, not to take the whole half hour to give you a history lesson, but the federal poverty line it's a metric.
Right.
And it was created in 1965. One.
Right.
And they tried to figure out a metric for the entire country, a threshold. And what the federal poverty line is, in my mind, is it is the absolute floor for anyone in the country anywhere. So it's basically $6 an hour. And so you'll read, if you go to the Dakota County website, it'll say 31,000 people live in poverty. That's 31,000 people that make less than $6 an hour. And if you know that the county tells us it's at least $15 an hour to live here, what do you call the people in between?
Right.
So that's where sometimes you get so skewed in, wow, who needs help? You don't have to be in abject poverty to need help getting through your week or your month. You know, there's a national group that does surveys every week since the pandemic. They're tracking the economic impact. Last week, results still say 1 in 5 folks can't make their ends meet. They can't meet their household expenses.
So tell us a little bit, Jason, if you would, about your volunteers. That we know any organization such as the Open Door, its success is largely predicated on the work of not only your great staff, but about your volunteers. Tell us about the people who volunteer at the Open Door. What do they do and how do they come to the Open Door?
Well, what do they do? The volunteers at the Open Door do everything. I mean, my job and the job of all of our staff is to support volunteers, put them in a position to make an impact. And our volunteers come from all walks of life. We have volunteers that have full-time jobs. We have some that are retired. But if you add up the time and energy volunteers give to the Open Door, it's the equivalent of 17 full-time employees.
Wow.
On any given day, we have between 40 and 80 people giving of their time to make impact. I mean, in its simplest sense, whether it's the Open Door or it's any other really established nonprofit organization, we're just a conduit for generosity. You know, we find folks that need help, and we find folks that are willing to help, and we figure out how to make those two connect.
And describe, if you would, what's some of the work that your volunteers do at the Open Door?
I joke, we have introverted and extroverted opportunities. You know, if you want to come in and sort cans, man, we've got all kinds of chances for you.
If you want to deal with the public, clients coming in?
If you want to do client-facing work, you can do that. If you want a free gym membership, right? We have volunteers at 7 o'clock every morning that drive to 7 different grocery stores. And we call rescue food near the end of its retail life. And they load up anywhere from 300 to 3,000 pounds of food in the back of our van. They bring it in, and then we have a giant sorting party. So if you've ever really wondered what it's like to put your thumb through a really not ripe peach, we can make that happen for you. So every day it's sorting and gathering.
So you talked earlier, Jason, about giving your clients choice in terms of food product and also trying to promote a healthy diet, not just relying on prepackaged foods and foods with a lot of sodium or a lot of sugar in there. Say a little bit more about that. What types of healthy food are we talking about? And how does the Open Door get access to that food to make it available to your clients?
Well, that's a great question. So I'll start with the focus on healthy food. You know, all the things we do at the Open Door are based on conversations with the folks that we support. And so we ask, you know, how can we be helpful? And clearly, I mean, data will show you learned in elementary school, right? You are what you eat. And there is such a relationship between income, diet, and health. And if you look at all the data, if you have low income, you are at a much greater risk of heart disease, diabetes, obesity, et cetera, et cetera. And so much of that is the accessibility of food. And so what we've committed to our clients is that we will provide the best food that we can. So when we say 70% perishable, that means meat, It means produce, fruits, vegetables, cheese, the stuff, the expensive stuff at the store. And we get 80% of the perishable food directly from grocery stores. We go to
As a donation.
As a donation, yep. We drive there every morning, and the stuff that's, there's a tight window between a retail life and a useful life, and it's probably 3 to 5 days. And so we collect food, and the same day it's sorted. The stuff that's bad goes in the compost bin. The stuff that's good goes directly to people that day, and they've still got several days where they can make use of it.
And another aspect of this issue about healthy food and eating healthier, it's really important, especially for kids that are in their developing years, isn't it? I mean, it's important for adults too. Obviously, the issues you mentioned about obesity and development of type 2 diabetes or type 1 or other problems, health problems. But for our kids, especially grade school age kids who are eating this food, isn't that important for them to have that balanced diet?
It's absolutely important. And, if you look at all the people that we serve, 40% of the folks that we serve are children. And we focus on the most vulnerable parts of society. And so one of our biggest programs that has grown is, it's called Mobile Lunchbox. And we take meals to students during the summertime. Our friends at Second Harvest, they get much more resources than we do, but they did a massive study of the state looking for the biggest gap in meals. Like, where's our greatest opportunity for impact? You know what they came back with, Steve? Meals for students in the suburbs in the summer. Think about not having access to school. If you need support on free and reduced lunch, that's 2 meals a day you don't get during the summer. And
can I ask you, interject here a quick question? We've had school closings due to the pandemic.
Yes.
And we've had kids who have missed out on meals and snacks available through the school. So you're seeing that impact showing up in increased demand at the open door?
Right. Well, it's been a problem during the summer for a long time. And during the pandemic, we've had Mobile Lunchbox running year-round in some capacity. If you know someone, teachers get a lot of love and they deserve it because they're wonderful. If you know someone that works in school nutrition, you should buy their coffee, you should give them a gift card and thank them, because they have been working overtime to figure out how to make meals accessible when you've got no one in the building, half the people in the building. And so we've worked with school districts, 191 in Burnsville and Eagan. We were volunteering to be on buses with nutrition workers delivering meals to students' homes. We have a weekly pickup right now at Metcalf Middle School for kids in virtual school who don't have access to any meals. And so getting access to meals for students is huge. And if I may, Steve, it really speaks to what our organization's good at. There is not truly a shortage of food. There is a shortage of a distribution network to get the food where it's needed. And so whether that's school meals or you've got a cafeteria and a staff there producing meals, how do we get it to them?
So it's really a much more of a logistical challenge than anything.
I mean, our number one expertise is compassion, kindness, and dignity, but right after that's logistics. And so if you think about, before the pandemic, we delivered maybe 5,000 meals during the summer to 5 neighborhoods. We did, last summer, 26 different neighborhoods. We delivered 40,000 meals. Now, those are meals that were easily produced.
Are all of those deliveries here in Dakota County, south of the river?
Yep, 4 school districts.
Very interesting. And this is a really important point, because clearly, Jason, you aren't just waiting for customers, for clients and their families and their kids to come into the open door.
Right.
You're going out to them. You're doing outreach into the community. Tell us about another program I understand that you've had called Garden to Table, which is related to this issue of healthier eating. What is Garden to Table?
Well, Garden to Table is it's a selection of community gardens that we've built around Dakota County. Whether it's in a neighborhood or whether it's a free plot of land at a church, we have 13 different spaces where clients can grow their own food. Now we provide dirt, compost, master gardener support, seeds, plants, everything you need to grow food, we provide. Last year we had over 300 households have a plot that grew 10 to 12 tons of their own produce. And the great part of that, not only, and there's so many benefits, if you know someone good at gardening, I'm not one of those people. If you know someone that is, there's so many benefits to gardening, but perhaps the greatest benefit for our clients, most of our gardeners tell us that during the growing season, they don't need to come to the food shelf.
Wow, that's really something, which makes your situation more tenable at the food shelf for people who don't have that opportunity.
Right, and a lot of our gardeners, I mean, if you know anyone that has a garden, you know when the tomatoes are in.
Right.
'Cause like, Steve, take some tomatoes. So we've become a relief valve. We have folks that have gardens, and even our gardeners that are clients, when they have excess, they bring it to the food shelf, and it goes right out.
Another program you have at Open Door is something called Mobile Lunchbox.
Yeah. Well, and that's the student meal thing that we were kind of referencing, is finding ways to get meals to students. And the key about that, because I get the question a lot, it's like, oh my gosh, you went to 26 neighborhoods last summer. How'd you pick those neighborhoods? And the trick to it is talking to the school district, talking to the partners, the social workers. Which neighborhoods do you have the highest concentration of students? And they help us identify, the school districts help us communicate, we pick up the meals, we take them out there. It's a really nice partnership between the schools and our organization.
You also did something called Pop-Up Produce Stand. It was a pilot program. What was the objective here?
Well, the objective there is to get as much healthy food into neighborhoods as possible. And so actually, we're at Thomson Reuters. I don't know if people know you film here. Right across the street is a community with, we know, 400 kids that need free and reduced lunch support. So once a week, our volunteers, with the help of Second Harvest, will probably have 15 to 20 pallets of produce. People can come through and pick what they want. So think of it as a free farmer's market.
The Open Door Pantry does a lot of community events on a recurring basis, annual basis. Tell us about what some of those annual events where we see the Open Door out in the broader community in Egan and Dakota County.
Well, we hope to do them again. As you know, that's always a
Yeah.
You know, our largest event, we just did an event last weekend called Super Bagging, which Scott Swinson, one of our volunteers, started. We were bagging groceries for tips at 5 different Cub locations. We have Empty Bowls, which is a great event where you can come get a hand-painted bowl, you get soup. We try to build community this year. That's going to be at Faithful Shepherd Catholic School, indoor and outdoor. So whatever folks feel most safe about, they can come. There's about 800 people. But yeah, and we take part in different community events like the Burnsville Fire Muster, Apple Valley 4th of July Parade. So we try to be visible where we can.
Very good. The Open Door has received numerous awards because of these innovative programs, some of which we've talked about here today. Tell us about what some of those awards are. What have you been recognized for in particular?
Gosh, you know, I don't pay a lot of attention to the awards. I know they're important. I mean,
It's nice to receive a pat on the back,
it
especially
is,
when you deserve it. But
if I can put it on a soapbox for a minute, Steve, we get recognized for creativity and innovation, whether that's our mobile lunchbox, right? If we're going out, we find a new way to do something. Getting food to people that need it shouldn't get an award. I mean, I feel like that's the threshold. We got a great award from the state of Minnesota for our partnership with Dakota County. And it stemmed from a real simple question. When we look for where do we make food available, where are folks that need help? You know, and you have to go to the Northern Service Center in Dakota County if you want benefits of some sort. So let's go there where they are. And so we worked with the staff there and Lynn Carr and her team in economic development. They bent over backwards. And what we did was, it was logical, but it was impactful. So we worked directly with the staff of the Northern Service Center, and we produced these massive drive-through produce distributions, and it became a huge neighborhood hub, and we found a way to get food to folks easier and faster. But it was I don't know, to me it was what we should be doing.
you must be talking to your other colleagues in the food business, getting food to people in need. Do you see them imitating some of the programs that have been developed at the Open Door?
Not as much as I'd like. We make our playbook available to anyone.
Everyone's proud of the way they do it, right?
Right.
But we can all learn from the way other people do things too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think of the 500 food shelves in Minnesota, they're all doing the best they can. Our push is to do better, and so we've helped food shelves in Minnesota and around the country learn how to do mobile food better. I mean, we learn from them too. So it's a great community of folks all just trying to figure out how to help and do it in the best way possible.
What do you see as the biggest challenge coming at you over the next few years? I know that's a difficult question, Jason, because we're living in unprecedented times.
Yeah.
None of us who are alive now were around in 1918 when we went through the influenza pandemic. But this pandemic, as we discussed earlier, has really changed the way all of us live our lives and the way we do business. So what do you see at the Open Door as your biggest challenge in coming years?
Gosh, my greatest challenge, and I could probably pick a couple of things. The thing that worries me the most is the fatigue of compassion. I think about folks, they're ready to move on. They're ready to get the pandemic behind us. They're ready to get other things behind us. I'm worried that the attention and the focus that people have put into making our world a better place is going to wane. That's my biggest concern, because I will tell you, one of the great things of the pandemic, Steve, we've had over 1,000 new people volunteer in our organization, and I know that's not unique.
That's fantastic.
And that's not unique to the Open Door. People have been motivated to find a way to do good things. I just hope that's not a fad, because what we've proven is if you give organizations like the Open Door or Second Harvest or the Food Group, if you give more time and energy and resources, it's amazing the impact we can have. So that's, as long as there is community will, we can make remarkable change.
So I'm hoping that we have some viewers today who are listening to you and this fantastic story about the work that you do at the Open Door, who are thinking, how can I help? How can they help? What can they do to help alleviate hunger in our own community and help the Open Door?
Well, it's a great question, and the answer is there is absolutely a role for everybody. And for some people, it's writing a check, and that's probably the easiest thing you can do. Host a food drive. You can find a way to volunteer, or perhaps, it's a little bit bigger thought, make sure that people in your life, one, know how to get food if they need it, and know it's okay to ask for help. I think if collectively we can reduce that stigma and know that we all play a role in the whole idea about who is, there's no poor people in Egan. Well, poverty lives everywhere.
Everywhere, right.
And it's just expanding that definition, creating compassion, and taking the choice to get involved. There's a role for every single person to play.
Before we leave, we're down to less than a minute. Give us the address of the Open Door.
3910 Ron Road in Egan, or go to theopendoorpantry.org. You can learn all about volunteering, how to set up a food drive, or just Google food shelf near me and you'll find a place you can get involved.
Jason, I want to congratulate you on the tremendous work that you and the staff and volunteers at the Open Door have been doing over these years, really meeting urgent need in our community for people needing food assistance. So we thank you very much for all that work. And thank you for appearing on Access to Democracy today, your first time appearance, and we'd love to have you back someday.
Steve, thanks for taking the time and shining a light on this important subject.
Thank you.